My name is Kurt Clendon, and we are here with the Kapow Intergalactic Film Festival 2021. We are talking here with Justin Brown, the creator of Rift. And Justin, first of all, two things. You're
Yeah.
you're the first filmmaker, as far as I've seen so far, who's come from Nova Scotia or sent something from
Ah,
Nova Scotia, and
great.
which I've always thought was just such a wonderful name for a town. And then the other thing is, this is the first time we've ever actually gotten a video about, alien, extraterrestrial contact or abduction. So this is really exciting, that you ended up sending this in. Now, have you personally had some of your own experiences growing up? Any sightings, or you've ever been abducted?
Not that I'm aware of, first of all, that I was abducted, but when I was a kid, I was on a fishing trip with my father, actually, and we saw something that, you know, could have meteorologically been a fireball coming down and landing somewhere, but there were no reports of it. And I guess I was about 9 years old at that point. It's always stuck in my mind that there's probably a larger dynamic at work. And as we all grow and learn about science and the universe, we realize that, yeah, that's in fact true. So, as far as experiences, not so much. But in making this movie, I was sort of, as Friedrich Nietzsche likes to say, drawn into the abyss, and the abyss began to stare back at me because I did have an experience while filming B-roll for
Dude, which was
this and another
brilliant,
movie.
man. I
Yeah,
That was so kick-ass, so exciting, dude, that you put that little
cool.
giblet in there, man. And like, so you were just in the vortex, man. You were in the vortex of what was going on. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that this woman was so willing, Heather was so willing to talk about her experience. How'd you find her? How did she reach out to you? Were you like, okay, I've heard about someone in town who might have had an experience? How did you even find her?
Yeah, actually it's a weird story because I was never really a filmmaker until I made this movie. I started, I was friends with a guy who was making a movie, and I was part of his documentary on something that happened in the same town here that this movie is about, 1967. Incidentally, the world's only government documented UFO crash, I'll say. It's the same town. So
Dude,
this guy wanted to make a revamp of the doc that he had originally made because the other partner he had sort of left with the footage and he was left with nothing. So he said, "Here's my idea. This is what I want to do." I said, "I think you should do it this way. And maybe you could market it to a wider audience as a human interest story." So we set up a meeting with the author that was a part of his story, and I pitched the idea to those two. And by the end of the meeting, against my best wishes, I was now making that movie. So I got a bunch of camera gear and started filming. And I thought the best way to get my chops up to spec was to do maybe a short film on something else I'd heard about. And I'd heard about this lady through this author, Chris Stiles, who's now a dear friend of mine, and filmed a story about her, Heather Dowsett, down in the South Shore in the same town, Shag Harbor.
dude, isn't that amazing when you just put out that intention? You just kind of blip the antenna there and you just follow it. You follow, like you're saying, you like, what's in that abyss? What's in there? And it just
Yeah,
keeps revealing the craziest information to you. Because had you
true.
not just said, yes, what the heck, I'll help you out with this thing.
Yeah,
Had you not done that, it would not have led you to where you're at right now. I mean, this is just crazy. The fact that you were saying that you were not a filmmaker up to this point, and this is the thing that
oh,
sparked your interest in actually making a movie. I mean, dude, that's
yeah.
just brilliant.
Synchronicity. And now this is the eighth official selection for a film festival
I
for this
love
short
it,
film.
dude.
My first kick at the can. So hey, I mean, I guess it's meant to be.
Oh my God, absolutely. And eight is my favorite number because it symbolizes infinity to me. So every time I think of eight,
Yeah.
it's infinity. So this is just extra, extra, extra exciting. The fact that we're the eighth film festival you submitted it to. God, man. So
Cool.
after you did this movie, did it inspire you to be like, okay, now all of a sudden I've got all these more ideas now that I just got to start going out and shooting.
Big time. So this first film now has sort of been developing in my mind and on paper into maybe a four-part web series because the other parties involved in this film now want to tell their side of the
Aha,
story. So I'm going to tell their side
aha.
of the story. And actually, this footage came from another movie I was shooting because I was inspired by it, about a guy in the same town who saw a sea monster with his dad and four other
Dude,
people in 76.
what is
So
going on with this town, man? What's going on, dude? What's in the water?
it's
What's in the
strange.
hills? Like
Yeah.
what's hiding underground? I mean, this is just crazy, man. So they had the UFO sighting, someone saw a sea
Yeah.
monster. Then you
Yeah.
then you had this story here with Heather.
Yeah.
So the people that you're talking about who now want to tell their story, is it those
Yes.
women at Oh gosh, which is just so great that they have one of these out there in Nova Scotia. The oh god, I wrote it down. The Shag Harbor Incident Society, which I think is just such a even
Yeah.
a great name for an indie band, you know, the Shag Harbor Incident Society. So, um, so those women who are there, where their faces were
Yeah.
blacked out, are those the ones who are going to come forward and tell their story now?
Well, at least one of them. See, they're both sisters. And I should probably just
Ah,
let the audience know that the quick log line for the film is one woman reconciles with alien abductions. There are two sisters in the same town that claim the same tale. So the film's called Rift, and there is the story, right? So that other side of the story that has sort of torn this town asunder on some level now wants to tell their side of the story, but only one of the sisters. The other sister refuses to go public, although she has publicly spoken. She doesn't want to be part of this new project. So it's going to be really interesting, good or bad, whatever they want to say is going to be very entertaining either way because it's a fantastic subject just to begin with.
oh my gosh, man! Who knows what other rabbit holes you're going to be opening through this? Because now, I
Sure.
mean, I'm already seeing it. Like now, she's going to say, "Yes, I would love to tell my story," and then what's going to happen? Then her sister's going to be like, "Well, maybe I want to, maybe I want to tell my side too," and then that's going to draw someone else out of the shadows who's like, you know, "Oh,
Right.
I've got to tell," you know. So, dude, you're just gonna keep unraveling these stories. I feel it,
Yeah.
man. I mean, especially if there's so much craziness going on in this town as it is. Who knows what else you're gonna find? What other kinds of cryptids you're gonna find?
Yeah, and you know what? I give a lot of credit to a couple other filmmakers who have done this. Seth Breedlove, he has like I think they're called Small Town Monsters. He's done a whole series of little short films and documentaries about things like this all across the states, and as well as the guys from Hellier. They both inspired me because
Yes,
those they have a web series, and
Hellier's
Small
great.
Town Monster has their own documentary stuff. So I sort of started thinking with those guys and what's happening in this town. And I thought, you know what, with all this weirdness, why not just go for the bigger picture and maybe create something more spectacular?
Oh my gosh, and I love the fact
Yeah,
that you're willing to tell these tales because it's so interesting because especially during the pandemic, we had lots of UFO news coming out like at such a rapid pace. And that's going back to the beginning of the pandemic where the
yeah,
Pentagon finally admits, yes, this declassified footage, yes, those are UFOs or they're calling them UAPs now. And then we hear
hmm,
this from the Israeli space security chief saying, oh yeah, we've been in contact with the Galactic Federation for decades, you know, and this is
mm,
something we've all known about. And then you hear, and then, you know, there's that Harvard professor who says, oh yeah, we were visited by an alien in 2017, and then we had the sighting at the Hawaii UFO, you know, a Hawaii UFO
yeah,
just not too long ago. So it's just like it's continually. Oh, and then the Black Vault papers that
yeah,
were opened up, you know. So it's like now it's becoming this kind of conversation is becoming more commonplace now, and
yeah,
I would love it if these people, like the abductees and the contactees, th- now hopefully they're going to start feeling okay with telling more of their stories because they're not looked at sort of like as the Frankenstein monster, you know, with it, you know, everyone's coming after him with torches. Oh, you're crazy, you know. So it's like now maybe they could feel free to be like, okay, you know what? Here's my story. I know you guys called me crazy decades ago, but you know what? I gotta tell the tale because with each story that's told, it now inspires another person to want to tell their story, just like we've seen here. The one, you know, that sister, she didn't want to talk, but now she's going,
yeah.
you know, you had some time to marinate in there, had some time to marinate.
Dude, I'm stoked that you're so tuned into all of this stuff going on. And secondly, I just like to say that I think the time is right for this type of thinking. I think that the world has been so stagnant for so long, and people are ready finally now to embrace that change. And I don't mean the younger generations, below us and us, but I mean the older generations who have held that so close to heart. I think the time is ready for more people to come forward, regardless of whether or not what they say is the exact truth. It's their truth, and
Hmm.
we need to sort of explore those truths and sort of extract what kind of information and data points we can grab, put them all together, and create a new picture of the universe and ourselves in it.
Well, it's cool that you're saying that because with each of these experiences, what's interesting is you start finding Venn diagrams between the stories. You start finding those common things. You're going, oh, aha, that links up with this thing that this person, that this
That's right.
shaman talked about, or that this Amazon rainforest witch doctor talked about, or this philosopher, or this guy, or that guy. And you start going, oh my gosh. And then the validity meter just starts going, you know, it just starts raising. So I think it's
Yep.
so cool that you're telling stories like this. The fact that you're following the synchronicities, you know, that's a huge deal. That's a huge part
Yeah.
of it, is following those
Thank you.
synchronicities and being open to it. Now, there were some parts in here which I thought were great, like the opening with the drone shots. And as
Cool.
I was watching that, I'm like, wow, this is great. This is like we're giving a foreshadowing from a UFO's perspective. That's the way I looked at
Yeah.
it when I saw those drone
Right.
shots. And then there's a part where in the boat, and I saw the boat, it was like, ooh, that's interesting. That's like an analogy of it's a ship, you know? And the
Hmm.
way that you hear like the music in there, it almost sounds like it's like a spaceship, like little computer sounds and stuff. So, you know, and it's been, what is that? Nautical. They're
Right.
sailors of the cosmos, you know? So it was interesting. I saw some of these parallels. Also, I love the split screen effects that you put in there. Um, it's interesting too that Heather talks about the Nordics, um, because these are a species that we've heard about time and time again throughout, you know,
Sure.
throughout history um, from different people's stories. And it was cool too that she showed the footage from her camera. That she's like, look at this, you know, she's zooming in and you see the orbs up there. And then the fact
Yeah.
that while you were out there, you had your own experience. What was that like for you to be like, oh my God, here I'm hearing this story from this woman, and then it's like, now here I'm seeing it myself.
It was extraordinary. I'm going to be honest with you. In that moment, and it's strange because when I was seeing that, I was recalled back to a point somewhere around 2000 when I was living in the Midwest in Canada. I had a very similar sort of sighting from a distance, and I had the same thought process. The thought process was, that's a ping pong ball. And then I was like, no, that doesn't compute. It's a bag. And I was like, that doesn't compute either. And then I said, oh my God, I've got all this camera gear, a telephoto lens, I've got, HD camera, I've got all this stuff. So I pulled it out with the telescopic lens and I got right in on it and zoomed in on it. And it was absolutely none of those things. And to be honest with you, I had a bit of I hate to use the term like religious moment or spiritual moment, but that's what it was. It was like I was pulled out of myself to say, hey, listen, this stuff is going on. You've sort of been reading about it your whole life, but this is just happening to you right now to remind you that the world is big. You got to put yourself into it and inject your ideas out there. And at some point, these are going to catch on, and people are going to start opening up to the idea that these things are a part of our lives, and stop putting them down and taking the data where it's required.
And it's so cool that you're saying that, because it's like when that critic comes in, when that analyst comes in, it's like that's an unnecessary filter that is like, how should I put it? A lot of times people are thinking, well, who's going to want to hear this story? Oh, no one's going to want to hear this crazy story. So they're critiquing some very potentially powerful information that could actually
Yeah.
it's like ready to burst at the dam, you know. It's like, let me out of here. I'm a story that wants to be told, you know. And so many times there's that analyst that's going, no, 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 let's not let that out. But who knows what that potential could open up should that information come out. And the fact that you didn't edit yourself from that and you go, okay, let's go get that camera equipment, we got to go get it
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. Well, in the words of like my favorite ufologist, Stanton Friedman, who now is passed, he always said, the skeptics, a lot of these skeptics would come into this sort of thing and they'd say, listen, don't bother me with the facts. I've got my mind made up. Right.
Yeah,
And then they
yeah.
run with that. And that's been the problem in the past. And I think we're finally seeing a breaking of that. And people are now saying, hey, listen, there's something very interesting going on here. Even if we can't grasp it in its full context, maybe we can take some of that and apply that to our own tech or knowledge or even open-mindedness about what's possible in the future.
Gosh, man, the more that this information keeps coming through and the more this stuff just keeps leaking, what's interesting is it reminds me of like when it shows you what's possible. It shows you, like, it's like in the olden days when PT Barnum, you know, they go to the circus and it was this astounding thing, like, oh my God, look at this human being is doing this trapeze thing. Like, I can't believe that's real. That's like supernatural that's happening right there. Or this person
Right.
is, you know, taming an elephant, or, you know, whatever it may be. And it was like this big magical experience, kind of like when you see at the Olympics. Like, okay, just when you think that someone cannot possibly pole vault high enough, someone else breaks that record because someone else
Yeah.
showed them that that was possible to go that high. But decades before, someone's like, there's no way that anyone would ever go that high. But someone proves that wrong. Now you're going, oh my God, what else? What else is out there?
Hey,
So
listen, I think people underestimate human potential. And like what I've sort of tried to showcase in this film is that, you know what, we're just a small piece of the pie. Our human potential is vast and great, and there are others potentially out there, whether in physical space or not, that probably are a lot older than we are and have figured some more things out. So I don't think that's too ridiculous to ponder.
well, and the interesting thing is, what I'm curious about too is to see how this is going to unfold in your in your journey. Now that you, how should I put it? Now that you've been winked at by them, they've seen you, they've
Yeah.
seen you, and it's been said that like we keep hearing out there where people going, well, if the UFOs exist, or if the extraterrestrials exist, why don't they just come on down to the White House lawn and land? Well, okay, you kind of like it's been said that they've given us opportunities to accept them. They've given us
Mm.
many opportunities, many sightings for us to go, wow, that's pretty cool. I want to learn more. But what have we either done? We've either run scared because like, oh my god, I don't know what that is, or debunked it and said, oh, that's not real, or someone else has told us, well, that could be a threat to us. So it's
Yeah.
like when someone is like constantly trying to feed you and you're going, oh, I'm not going to eat that. It's like, well, then why am I going to cook you up a great meal here if you're not going to, it's
Yeah.
like, if you're not going to take this invitation, how could you expect us to go even any further, with this relationship, so to speak?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think,
One of the great Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, 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 go on, go on, go on.
I was going to say one of my favorite researchers. His name is Jacques Vallée. I think he sort of hammers the point home that this is not a modern phenomenon. This is actually a phenomenon that goes back as long as we've been able to tell stories. So when you look at it in that context and the multiple forms it's taken over time and transformed itself to meet our current cultural requirements, I think you see sort of the same narrative. I think that in the end, we're going to recognize that the universe is teeming with life, and we are we're special. I'm not taking anything away from how special we really are, but I think that we're going to recognize that we're part of a larger school, and we have to understand our place on the totem and maybe do things for the better of the cosmos.
Well, one of the interesting thing is during the Harbor Incident Society, is when they're all here. Here you got these group of people who are like, okay, let's get down to the brass tacks. Da, 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 da. And then the lady goes, well, I myself am extraterrestrial. And she says this to these guys, and then there's
So
silence.
matter of fact, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's so matter of fact. And then there's silence, and the guy goes, well, I'm not sure what to do with that information. But back to this thing that we were talking about. And it's like, dude, you're like, it's like I saw like his psychology was allowing him to take him to a certain point, but once
Yeah.
that point was breached with this whole other realm that he was not yet to accept into his reality paradigm, he's like, okay, we got to put the brakes on that. Let's go back to this thing that we were talking about, rather than going,
Yeah.
oh, tell me more, open up to me more about that story. I mean, that would have been an incredible, because it's not like she had a whole lot of information that she actually kind of wanted to share.
Absolutely, and you can see too in that scene how uncomfortable the idea still makes people, right? But I think over time, we're meant to evolve and digest newer forms of information. That made it hard in the past to sort of do that. I'm not saying I know the answer of what's happening. I absolutely have no idea what this is, and it could be any one of those options or hypotheses that people have said, from gods to aliens to angels to whatever it might be, interdimensional beings or whatever. Maybe we're a hive mind or a simulation. It really doesn't, I don't know what the cosmos is or how it's operating, but there is in fact something interacting with us, and we're interacting with it. And someone I've met and interviewed in the past who I have a lot of respect for is author Greg Bishop, and he sort of has this concept of the co-creation theory, where we're participants in the
Yes,
process, the journey to
yes.
allow the manifestations to take place, right? So that kind of sounds,
Absolutely.
it's very quantum in one sense too,
Oh,
right?
dude, and it's beautiful and it's right on that following those synchronicities is all part of that. Following the
Right.
synchronicities, following the omens, the signs. Those are the, well, I like to look at them as those are the breadcrumbs towards the, it's like, look, yep, the manifestation is, you keep following this calling, you keep following the sound, you're gonna get to the epicenter of where the music is playing, so to speak. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting because, okay, so one thing I wanted to ask you concerning Heather, did
Sure.
she, when she found out that you wanted to interview her, did she was she like, finally I get to tell my story on camera, and that story is now going to be shared with many more people? Or was she someone like, well, I don't, these people think I'm crazy, I don't know if I want to really tell that story. So what was that
Okay,
like?
good story there. That's a good story. A great question. Heather actually goes back historically. She was connected to a guy named Bud Hopkins back in the day
Bud
who wrote a lot of
Hopkins.
books about alien abductions, right? Very famous. Who incidentally was great friends, if not partners, with Leslie Kane, who wrote this great book on UFOs, and now has a show on Netflix called Surviving Death. The 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Anyway, she was involved with Bud. My friend Chris, who wrote this book, who was in the documentary I was telling you about, and he's sort of the subject of my largest feature that hopefully is going to come out in the next couple of years with proper funding. He wrote a book back in the '90s with a guy named Don Ledger, and they told her story under a pseudonym for her, for risk of
Oh,
exposure, right?
oh,
Because it was still back in the '90s, small town sort of stuff. He wrote a new book just recently where she's highlighted in that story as well, and I even have my own chapter with this sighting that you've seen in that
awesome,
movie in it, right? So she's had
awesome.
context in the past with the public eye, but I think for me and her together in our relationship, I think it was important for her to document it visually, one on one with a camera for posterity too, right? Because a lot of these stories that I'm trying to tell, it's not just about telling the story or creating an emotion or feeling. It's about recording history and folklore and tradition that go along with that, right? So I think it's very important that we hold on to those stories, regardless of whether or not you believe them or not.
Well, the fact that she was able to, I mean, it's hard for anyone to believe someone who says, I've been aboard a craft. I went to what I
Mm.
thought was a camp, but he was actually aboard a craft, and I was gone for X amount of, I'm sure that's even hard for the person who experiences it. It's hard for them to believe, and then for them to
Sure.
have that courage to even come out and tell another person, for that potential of them going, oh, for being shamed about it, or you're
Yeah.
crazy or nuts, just forget about that. That was just a hallucination, or you had too much sugar that day, or whatever. Um, it's really really cool that she, I think she's going to feel real happy, the fact that this is archived, this is officially out there in the world. And the cool thing is that now that Kapow is virtual this year, it expands the amount of viewers,
True.
potentials, then rather than if it was just in a theater, in
Yeah.
the past versions of this festival. So it's cool now that it's virtual. Anybody can be able to tune in. Um, which means that who knows who's waiting out there, who's going to be able to just feel magnetized to this, in that co-creation, like you're talking about, the
Yeah.
co-creation of the universe. It's going to go, hey, come on over here. This is something you might want to see. Maybe
Cool.
watching this documentary is going to inspire you to tell your story, to go out there and tell people about this. It's interesting. I'm on TikTok, and there's a guy who every day he posts footage of UFOs. He said UFOs have followed him around ever since he was a little kid. His dad and his grandpa. And his
Mm.
grandpa back in Vietnam actually saw crashed UFOs and dead extraterrestrials. And he said that his dad still gets phone calls from, because the dad and the grandpa were still in the military. Anyway, the main point of this is that it's an anonymous TikTok account, but I've been in contact with this guy, and even because I have a podcast, and I'm like, I told him, I said, I want to interview you for the podcast. We don't have to say what your real name is. We don't have to say what your location is. This is, even though this person is sort of documenting their life on there, they're still worried about actually telling the story. And it's like,
Sure.
this could be so therapeutic for you. This could be
Yeah.
so helpful for who knows who else out there who's watching. And so
Hmm.
that's why I got so excited when I saw your documentary. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. First of all, here's
Well,
someone who's pursuing a story, and then second of all, the person who's willing to tell the story.
absolutely. And I think it's important to take all this information from really like a skeptical standpoint is not a bad standpoint. A healthy skeptical standpoint says, here's all the information. Now I base my conclusion on that scientific method foundation, right? But the key to good science doesn't end there. The key to good science is someone like you or I who are curious about the world and how it works, because that's how great discoveries are made, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of someone like Heather and the rest of the world, I think like at this point in her life in particular, and I know that there's a lot of people out there like her, they've gotten to a point in their life, they're like, I don't care anymore. This is what happened to me. Take it or leave it. I have to tell this story to gain relief from myself and get that off my shoulders and put that out to the world. So it's great that there's someone like you also who's reaching out in that arena, because I did that in the past as well, and I can really appreciate what you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, man. And to get back
Yeah,
to what you were saying about the skeptics, through the years, I grew. I without even realizing it, I didn't realize that. Like I was okay. I once heard explained to me that there's the skeptics and then there are the debunkers.
yeah.
So I was confusing without I was putting the debunkers and the skeptics under the same umbrella, not
I think
realizing,
we all were.
yeah, that there are
Yeah,
those who are just like so dead set against it, strictly on principle, strictly on a belief system or whatever, that they're like, no, I can't allow myself to even comprehend the idea of that something being real. So no, we're just that's not real. Whereas there are those skeptics who are like, I don't know about that, but maybe if I saw some more information that, until something resonated with me personally, then maybe I would, look deeper into this thing. And sometimes it takes them being able to see that themselves, just like with you with this experience. You're
yeah,
like,
right.
holy cow, dude. Well, I
I was
see
like,
it up in the
thank
sky.
you.
It was so cool. Man, there's a documentary called I think it's called The Man Who Sees UFOs. And it's
Yeah,
about this guy named Christoph who lives out like in Monterey, somewhere in California, and he's
yeah.
always seen UFOs. And the person who's documenting them, they're you hear their asides to the camera, like, I don't know what is he just a crazy guy or what's going on? But near the end of the thing, they're out there, right before the credits, and Christoph is like, he's like, okay, I'm gonna call in a UFO right now. I'm gonna do right now. He's like, there it is. And then the person, sure enough, right there on film, the guy was able to get his camera, so it was like, it's like that aha moment happened for the very person who was documenting it, being skeptical behind the camera. And then it's like, oh, I have, like in Blues Brothers, I have seen the light. So it's kind of like what happened here going, this is
Yeah,
amazing. This is documented,
totally amazing. And that documentary is really great. I've seen that. I love everything they did with that film, just from the cinematography, the shots, the quality was just all there. You really can appreciate a piece of art when you see something like that. In terms of the phenomenon, like something like that is exactly what we've been talking about. Sometimes if you put yourself into the world, most people don't understand when they hear the term magic, they think, oh my God, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's
Right.
lies. It's lies. It's tricks that we pull on people to make it think we're doing things. But real magic is a thought that someone has in their mind,
Uh-huh.
then they create it in the material world, whether
Yeah.
that's a business or a movie or a piece of art. That is magic. Magic
Yeah,
exists. And I think it's all the same thing when we're talking about this phenomenon.
dude, absolutely. And that's the cool thing. That's one of the most empowering things is when someone realizes that they are coexisting, co-creating their reality. There's a true
Yeah.
relationship going on there. And when people realize that, like, holy cow, this thing is happening that's why synchronicities are so great, because it's like, okay, this thing that's happening is so in direct correlation with this thing that I was just talking about 5 minutes ago. And then
Yeah.
when you got enough of those examples saved up in your brain, you're going, okay, so can we at this point agree that I co-created that existence? Now, if that's the case, then what can I do actually intentionally now? Now that I know that I
Yeah.
actually do it accidentally, okay,
Yeah.
now that I can it's like the difference between uh let's say, some kid getting behind the wheel of a car at 14, not knowing, how to drive it. He's just like, okay, I turn the key and okay, this thing. It's the difference between someone who's just sitting into the seat rather than someone who's got their license and they know, okay, cool. Now, all right, that's the
Yeah.
button you turn on the radio with. Oh, this is the turn
Level up.
signal. Yeah, exactly. And it's great because as you start finding yourself dreaming bigger,
Mm,
and allowing in those stranger and stranger circumstances, they sure enough, they come on in. They're like, wow, you're
that's it.
inviting me in, all right, then
Yeah.
I'm gonna step my foot in there. I'm gonna make a guest appearance.
And I think that's wisdom too, right? At a certain point in your life, you can't resist the flow of your own life, right? You have to take charge of it and be in control of it, but there's a specific flow. And oftentimes people get in trouble in their life when they try to resist that flow. So I think if you're honest with yourself, with the best intentions and you work hard, realistic goals are achievable. And, going for bigger goals is the best target you can have, because sometimes it happens.
Well, it really does, and that's an interesting thing because it's like so many times we hear that, there's that sort of people like when they talk of probability, for some reason they think in their brain that there's a probability, more of a probability that something's going to go wrong, or more of a probability that something's not going to work. But it's like,
Sure.
why? Like, it's strange that people are putting so much more of a reverence and a respect towards that aspect of probability, rather than an equal reverence towards the possibility of something extraordinary and beautifully satisfying and
Yeah.
crazily surprising working in your favor could also happen. That also equally exists. And it's funny because I've noticed when you get into that kind of relationship mode with the
Yeah.
co-creation, it's just like, okay, you want to see more? You want to see more? Yeah, let's do it. And then that becomes a commonplace language for
For
your
sure.
co-creation.
I think the greatest success really does come from that kind of perspective. Having proper perspective, understanding who you are amongst everybody else, humbling yourself to that level, leaving your ego at the door and just recognizing that, maybe I have it better than most to get to the point that I have. And, being honest with yourself about that, and then shooting higher, knowing that you have those resources at hand that maybe not everybody has. So why not take advantage of that while you can and give back when you have those opportunities as well? That's all a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's like you say, you put yourself out into the world, do a good thing, somebody's listening, someone grabs on, maybe you can help somebody, and it all sort of helps itself in the process. And that's what happened with me in this short film.
Oh yeah, because it's so interesting because you followed your curiosity. You're just like, okay, what's over here? Something's pulling me over here. I'm going to, there's something here. I'm going to keep diving in deeper with this. And
Sure.
I just think that um, I think that this movie is going to be very, very inspiring for a lot of people. And I just
I
thank you
really
so much
appreciate
for
that.
this is just so kick-ass, dude. Justin, this has been great. And are there places that you'd like to before I tie up this interview? Are there any like Instagrams or uh, any sort of social network places that you'd like to direct people to?
Sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Alien Dad. That's my handle there. And you can check out what my artistic focus is at justintoniobrown.com/WordPress. I think that's it. So hopefully that'll get you there and not to a famous ex NFL football player or something. We'll see. That happens a lot in the Google search for me. So
God, well, Justin, that's like I really appreciate you taking the time out for today, and those of you who are watching, thanks for stopping by to Kapow IFF 2021 and check out Rift. I mean, it's just great, especially for you UFO enthusiasts and the skeptics. It's a movie that inspires everybody. So, um, you followed your truth. She followed her truth. I think that's just a wonderful moral right there, I think.
thank you so much. And I'm really, really stoked that I mean, I know you're part of the Kapow Intergalactic Film Fest, but it's really inspiring to see how nerdy you are, just like me, to be involved
Yeah.
with all this stuff. So
Oh
thank
yeah,
you
dude.
for having
You're
me on here to
welcome,
share
man.
this moment.
Oh man, this is so fun. Well, you take care and have a great day.